Good morning, everybody. My name is Marty Mascari. I am with the North Central Texas Area Agency on the Aging and the North Central Texas Aging and Disability Resource Center, or ADRC, both of which are under the umbrella of the North Central Texas Council of Governments. I'm a contractor with them, and we are in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas area, for those of you joining us from Greece. Very good to have all of you. In just a minute, once we get going, I will reload the link for the slides in the chat this morning. I apologize, it was a technical issue and I could not get them in the emails. And so I'll reload that. I've loaded it a couple of times, but I'll reload it in the chat again. But in the meantime, we're gonna ask Sheila if she will start. She will go next and talk to us about the CEUs.
And we're excited today, everyone, because of your request, now we're able to give CLE credit for attorneys as well. So not only do we give credit for nurses, social workers, assisted living managers, and licensed professional counselors, now we can give attorneys credit as well. So it's our pleasure to be able to do this, because you've heard me say many times, for those of you who've been on here before, that education is our primary objective. An educated public is better for all of us, and especially for all these professionals on here, because they're taking care of us. And so we want everybody to be educated and to know how these things work. And Medicaid is very complicated. That's why the joke about this Medicaid made simple, there is nothing simple about Medicaid. So, but anyway, that's what we're here to do, to hopefully, and you've got a treat today with who's giving it, because he is very well, he has been in Medicaid for a long time, Tom has, and so he can certainly answer your questions. So that's good, all good.
So in order to get these your CEUs, we will be sending you in a follow-up email. It should go out later this afternoon. In a follow-up email, the documents you will need, and you will need to complete the evaluation form and the sign-in sheet. It's two separate documents, and you're going to either need to take a picture of them with your phone or scan them in and send them back to Sheila. Her email address is here, but her email address will also be in the email. And then Sheila, I know, will send the CEUs back, but she says that the State Bar Association sends the CLEs out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Very good. Very good. In addition to that, we also will have a Google survey that should pop up as you close out of Zoom today when we're done with the webinar. Please complete that. The Google survey, we have you fill out, and that's in order for us to report back on the goals and objectives we set forth when we applied for the funding to put on these webinars. And we get funding through the state, and so we have to report back on our goals and objectives. So please complete that for us as well. We'd certainly appreciate it. Sheila, I'm going to let you introduce Fred. I'm sorry, Fred. I'm sorry, Tom. I am so sorry. And we'll get rolling.
Nope,
I'm sorry.
not Fred.
It's been a crazy half hour. I'm frazzled a little bit. I really apologize.
Hey, that's okay. We're all like that. That's why I'm just laughing now. It's like, Tom Ford is a licensed Medicaid attorney, and he has been working with Medicaid for more than 18 years. So he certainly can enlighten you on how Medicaid works, who it's for, who it's not for, because this is an interesting thing that people have. They have this misinformation, and they call us and we're like, no, that's not. So Tom can dispel all of that and help others to understand, if Medicaid is for them, this is what is involved. So without any further ado, my friend, Tom Ford.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Marty. I will tell you that I got to Texas as quick as I could. I was born in Louisiana, but moved here when I was 3 or 4. And there are many issues when people call our office. One would be a client on the phone saying they're going to take away my home. There
Tom,
might be
Tom,
someone. Yes.
I don't want to interrupt you, but could you speak up?
Yes.
If you could speak up, that would be great. I'm sorry. I'm just going to thank you so much.
Sure. I have a soft voice, but I carry a big stick. So Texas will take away my home is one fear that people have. I have to go broke before I can get Medicaid is another common misconception. I make too much money to qualify for Medicaid is another question that I hear frequently. I have too many assets, so I'll never qualify for Medicaid. All those things basically are false for most people. If you're a Rockefeller, maybe not, but a normal citizen can qualify for Medicaid. And we'll talk about that as we go through the session today. I will tell you that my partner and I studied Medicaid starting in the late 1990s, and because we felt like there was a need to help people and we wanted to fill that need, but we studied it for 2 years before we started actually accepting clients because it is somewhat complex. But another question that I hear when people call in, if I give away assets, I have to wait 5 years to get Medicaid, or I have health insurance, so I don't need Medicaid. I have long-term care insurance, so I don't need Medicaid. Medicare pays for rehab, so I don't need Medicaid. I have to stay in a nursing home to keep Medicaid. All of those statements are not true. If you give away assets, you may have to wait 5 years, but you also may be able to overcome that by paying a penalty for gifting the assets and still qualify for Medicaid. With the proper tools in place and through proper planning, it's possible to preserve your hard-earned assets so they last as long as possible for your care. Never assume your income is too high, your assets are too many, or you cannot get help. It's almost, there's always something we can do. If your income is above the limit, in Texas, we have a thing called a procedure called a qualified income trust that we can create with a client who has an income in excess of $2,742 in the year 2023. So if they have income of $3,000, we can create a qualified trust. They can put that income into the trust and then pay it to the nursing home. The penalty can be overcome under Texas law. My understanding is in Oklahoma, if you're $1 over the limit, too bad, you won't get qualified. Health insurance and Medicare only temporarily cover rehabilitation expenses. This is something that commonly comes up in the calls that I get. Someone will be in the hospital or in rehab and their Medicare is about to run out. Normally Medicare covers things for 20 days and then you go and you're going to have to pay a much larger amount than the 80% that Medicare pays. And so when that occurs, people get panicky because they're short of money and they don't know how to make that work. Long-term care insurance is something that people will believe will help, and certainly it does, but it often has limits and does not fully cover the cost. However, it is a great tool, and it gives you options that can help you preserve your assets. The tool is important, but it frequently doesn't pay the whole amount that has to be paid. What we're going to talk today about is nursing home Medicaid and a little bit about community-based Medicaid. Nursing home Medicaid is for people who are in a nursing home, and generally they're there because they need special care. They're either too weak to help themselves, or they have maybe dementia issues or other issues that require medical care. Skilled nursing care is what it's called. Community-based Medicaid, on the other hand, can provide help for assisted living, can provide access to group homes, and they can actually provide care in your home. Assisted living are places where perhaps you don't need full Medicaid care in a nursing home, but you need some assistance with living. An assisted living facility might be your choice for that. Usually, Medicare doesn't pay for that, but Medicaid doesn't pay for that. But there are exceptions, and it can be done. Group homes are usually private homes where maybe a few people live and are cared for by the people in the home or workers hired by them. That's sometimes a helpful place to be. Your home, there's now a program called Star Plus. Star Plus is a new experimental program in Texas. It's been around for 3 or 4 years, I believe. And what it does is it was created to determine if it would be less expensive for the state to care for people in their homes as opposed to in nursing homes. And so the experimental program was set up recently, and unfortunately, not long after it was set up, COVID came along and everything was turned on its ear. But basically, home care is possible on Medicaid. Basically, what you do is you apply just as you would for regular Medicaid through the Star Plus program under the Texas Health and Human Services group. And it's when it was set up, generally it was set up on a priority basis of when you applied. So in the early days, the application was made, and maybe 2 or 3 or 4 months later, you were accepted. During COVID, the wait times got much longer. And so there's another way to get on home care, and that is to use, to actually get yourself admitted to a nursing home, and then when you're approved for Medicaid, to transfer out to your home under the home-based Star Plus program. Medicare savings programs, there are 4 Medicare savings programs that provide assistance with Medicare costs. Qualified Medicare beneficiary programs, special or specified low-income Medicare beneficiary programs, qualifying individual programs, and qualified disabled and working individuals programs. These are all special programs within the Department of Health and Human Services of the state of Texas. And they each have unique requirements to get accepted. And if you're interested in one of those programs, you should contact the state Health and Human Services group or a local office of theirs and get into what is necessary in order to qualify. When you're trying to get qualified for Medicaid, there's various criteria that you have to meet. There's some non-financial criteria. For instance, generally you have to be a U.S. citizen. There are some minor exceptions, but citizenship is required. You must have a disability. And another one that's not on the screen is normally you're over age 65. And the final one is medical necessity. What happens when you're going to apply for a nursing home position is you have to take a test. The nurse or a medical person in the nursing home will put you through a standard test. And if they determine that the results of that test show that you might be eligible for Medicaid, then they're required to send that test to Austin, Texas, to the state headquarters of Texas Health and Human Services. And they have a panel of doctors that will review the test results. If both the nursing home and the panel of doctors say you're eligible or you meet the non-financial criteria, then you do, and you can be accepted into the Medicaid program, provided you overcome the financial criteria that next you encounter. The financial criteria consists of income and resources. The state of Texas says someone on Medicaid can have a maximum amount of income monthly from all sources of $2,742. Earlier, we talked about that, and I told you that in Texas, we have a workaround. We can create what's called a qualified income trust. So if your income is, say, $4,000 a month, we can create that trust. You can put your $4,000 in there and then pay it out to the nursing home and not be in violation of their cap limit of $2,742. Resources are a little more complex. Resources are the assets that you have in your life. And if you want to think about it, resources can be exempt. That is, they don't count. Some resources do count. For instance, your homestead does not count as a resource if your home is valued at less than $688,000. If it's valued for more than that, maybe you have to take out a mortgage or something to get the net value down below the $688,000. But if you have your home under $688,000, it is exempt while you're in Medicaid. There is one subtle issue which you should be aware of. If you're a single person and you have your home is exempt while you're on Medicaid, if you pass away, the state can make a claim against your home and for all the money that they've paid out for your care over the period of time that you've been in the nursing home. So if you're in that situation, you need to know that there's a fix for that too. In Texas, we have two ways to deal with that issue. One is called a ladybird deed. The other is called a transfer on death deed. If you do either one of those things and have it filed with the court, then when you pass away, that asset does not go through Medicaid estate recovery. It does not go through your probate estate, and it would be available to your family depending on what your will said. A ladybird deed is a little more complicated than that. Basically, what you do with a ladybird deed is you say, in a married couple, let me explain it that way. Let's say the husband is the one going into the nursing home. The wife is going to be the one living in the community. In nursing home talk, we say the one going into the nursing home is the institutionalized spouse, and the one staying in the community is the community spouse. So if I may use those terms while I talk, so you'll understand what I'm saying. A ladybird deed, the husband and wife would sign a partition agreement, which would divide their community interest in their home into two parts. One half for the community spouse, one half for the institutionalized spouse. Then the institutionalized spouse would write a deed for her or his 50% interest to the institution, to the community spouse. The community spouse would then write a deed, say to their children, that says, I hereby deed this house to my children, but I may change my mind and sell it to somebody else or give it away or live in it myself or any of those things. But if I don't sell it or give it away, when I die, it goes to my children. It doesn't go through my probate estate. The transfer on death deed works similarly. It doesn't go through the probate estate. It's kind of like life insurance. The money goes to the beneficiary. So if you own a homestead and you're going on Medicaid, you want to protect your home, and that's the way you do it. You find an attorney who can create one of those two documents for you and get it signed and get it filed in the court. Other income items would be paychecks from employment, from Social Security, from pension, oil royalties or mineral royalties, some annuities, and some rental income. What happens to your income is you're going to pay it each month to the state. So let's say you have $2,000 income from Social Security and pension total. So each month you will pay that to the state. The state will allow you to keep $60 out of your $2,000. And I am told beginning in September of this year, that amount will go up to $75. And that's the first time that's happened in many, many years. So that's a little bit of good news about it. But your income will be paid to the nursing home. And then the state will pay whatever your income doesn't pay over and above to the maximum amount that must be paid. So if you don't make a lot of money, you can still be qualified for Medicaid. Food and shelter is going to be provided by the nursing home. So you're in the nursing home, you're getting food, and you're getting shelter. That's part of what you're paying for. If you're receiving goods or services, you may need to see if those things might be considered income under the Medicaid rules. For instance, if you're, I just had a question. Are we answering questions as we go or at the end?
No.
At the end?
Yes.
Okay. If you receive income, say from rental income from your home, that's not allowed under Texas Medicaid. So that could result in you violating the rules and not being allowed to stay in Medicaid until you fix that situation and pay appropriate penalty. So if you're receiving things, you may or may not get yourself disqualified from Medicaid. When you file your Medicaid application, you're pretty much going to know what you can do or not do. Now, let's talk about excluded resources. Some of the resources that you may have in your life, the value is not counted when determining Medicaid eligibility. I've already mentioned that your home is not a countable asset while you're alive, and if you're single or married. But you can use a ladybird deed or a transfer on death deed to completely get beyond issues with Medicaid on those in those two ways. There are other excluded resources. For instance, one automobile can be excluded from coverage or from being a resource under Medicaid. Up to $1,500 in life insurance or cash value can be protected under Medicaid. You can have a prepaid burial and a prepaid funeral that you can do as part of your spend down to get your resources below the amount that allows you to be eligible. Also, IRAs, investment retirement monies are exempt by law, but the income still has to be paid to the state. There are accountable resources as well. Cash is a accountable resource. Person in the nursing home cannot have an amount exceeding $2,000. If they do, then they're not eligible. So we work very hard to keep that in line. However, let's say a couple has $200,000 in assets. Well, what you would do for that particular number is you would divide it in two, and you would have 100,000 on one side, which is less than the 148,620 that the community spouse can have. So that spouse could have that 100,000. But on the other side, the institutionalized spouse can only have 2,000. So the 98,000 has got to be spent down before the institutionalized spouse is eligible. So where you have countable resources like stocks, bonds, real estate other than your home, some mineral interest, they're going to take the total value of all those assets, divide it by two. Half belong to the institutionalized spouse, half to the community spouse. Depending on the amount that the community spouse has, their entire amount may be eligible or may have to have something done to reduce it down to 148,620. And the spouse that's in the nursing home also may need to have something done. Well, something done, what does that mean? Well, it could mean, for instance, if your house is worth $750,000 and you have no mortgage, if you got a $150,000 mortgage, you would be below the amount that you can keep without if your house was valued less than $688,000. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to pay bills. If you have bills, let's say you have a mortgage that you need to pay off, you can do that. You can pay legitimate bills, and you can buy financial instruments called Medicaid qualified annuities that will allow you to turn the resource or asset into an income stream and thereby acquire eligibility for Medicaid. So, but keep in mind the fair market value of countable assets, that would be money, stock, bonds, investments, anything like that. It would be valuable paintings. It could be cars beyond the one that you can keep. All assets other than the ones that are exempt or are countable resources. Examples of excluded resources, we've already talked about the homestead, one automobile, a prepaid funeral or cremation, if it's made irrevocable. And that's something you need to know. If you presently own a prepaid burial plan and you have to go on Medicaid in order to make it irrevocable, or you need to make it irrevocable in order to qualify for Medicaid. The way you make it irrevocable is you go to the funeral home or wherever you purchase the prepaid funeral and tell them what you're trying to do and have them attach an irrevocable disclaimer document to your policy so that you can share that with Medicaid when you file your application. Also, a burial plot is exempt as well, and you can have more than one burial plot. Next, we can talk about some Medicaid eligibility facts. The ones on this slide are from 2022. They should be from 2023.
I will get the 2023 and send them out with the follow-up email if I could get those for you all.
Well, for instance, the applicant's income cap, this is the maximum amount of income a person who's applying for Medicaid can have, is in 2023, $2,742. The monthly personal needs allowance is $60. That's the one that the rumor is it's going to go up to $75 on September the 1st. The individual resource amount, which the institutionalized spouse can have, a maximum of $2,000. There's a couple's resource allowance, and that is if both couples are in the nursing home, instead of a $2,000 maximum, the total that the two spouses can have is $3,000. The monthly minimum maintenance needs allowance. This is an amount that the nursing home says is available depending on the income of either spouse, that the spouse in the community could have up to, in 2023, $3,715.50. And what that means is, let's say one spouse is in the nursing home with an income of $2,000, and there's a spouse in the community has $3,000. Well, $3,000 is $715.50 short of what the community spouse can have. So that amount would be taken from the income of the spouse in the community and paid, or from the spouse in the nursing home and paid to the spouse in the community. So sometimes you can get income and move it from the institutional spouse's income, which is paid to the nursing home, and move it to the community spouse to help pay the living expenses that the community spouse has. There's a minimum community spouse resource allowance. They say that this doesn't mean the state is going to pay it to you. It means they'll let you have $27,480 as a reasonable amount of assets for the spouse in the community. The spouse in the nursing home can only have $2,000. The maximum, and wait a minute, that number in 2023 has gone up from 27,480 to 29,724. So it's a little bigger number. The maximum community spouse resource allowance is now $148,620, which means if the two spouses between them each had 150, the community spouse would have to pay $2,380, would have to spend down that much, while the spouse in the community would have to spend down $148,000. There's a divestment penalty divisor, which is a daily rate of penalty if when you're trying to get qualified for Medicaid, they discover that you have given away property or sold it for less than fair market value. If you have done that, then you're going to be penalized for that. And the penalty is $237.93 a day, or $7,212 a month. So, and there's a calculation that's involved in that. But basically, if you've given away assets, or and the reason for this is when Medicaid first came out, people just gave all their assets away and then filed for Medicaid. The state snapped to that pretty quick and put in penalties so that you basically have to pay the assets back to the community. When you're paying it back, however, the institutionalized spouse, if the institutionalized spouse is paying, say, $2,500 a month, and the penalty is $6,000 a month, then the spouse in the community would have to add $3,500 to the $2,500 paid by the institutionalized spouse to make the payment, or would have to buy a Medicaid annuity that would provide the income stream to pay that penalty. Pre-planning. People always talk to me about, I'm just thinking somewhere down the line, I might have to have Medicaid, or my relative might need Medicaid. That's a common issue in the minds of folks. And basically what they do is they learn these numbers that I'm talking about and what they mean by talking to an attorney or talking to someone who's knowledgeable in this area, and then try to rearrange their personal affairs so that they will be eligible if the need occurs. One of the most important things I think you can do is get a really Medicaid-friendly statutory durable power of attorney, because sometimes you have to move assets around and change the ownership of assets in order to get somebody qualified. So that is real important to have that document in place. I also find that frequently people don't have any documents, and that's a big problem, because when you're going on Medicaid, someone may need to make medical decisions for you, so they may need a medical power of attorney. Someone may need to make decisions about where your assets go. They may need to make lots of personal decisions. And if you have a standard estate planning package prepared by a reputable law firm, and it's got Medicaid planning built into at least the power of attorney, then you're far ahead of the game when you start doing your crisis planning. Crisis planning is done when mom's in the nursing home, about to be discharged, Medicare stopped paying, and she's got to go to a nursing home. That's when you have to do a crash program to change all the assets, to get the application filled out, to get mom in a nursing home, and to get her qualified for Medicaid so the state will help make payments for her care. What about Medicare? People ask about that. Medicare can be helpful to getting eligible for nursing home care. If you stay in the hospital for 3 nights or more prior to going into a nursing home or rehab facility, then Medicare is going to pay day 1 through day 20 of your care. However, unless you have a supplement policy that pays additional out to 100 days, Medicare ends after 20 days. It doesn't end, but the amount it pays goes way down, and you would be paying $194.50 per day for days 21 to 100. So one thing to consider is maybe get supplemental insurance if you can. And another is to try to make a plan while you're in day 1 to 21, while you have financial coverage, and it looks like a long-term situation is shaping up. Supplemental policies, you can buy those. They're more expensive than a typical Advantage plan, but they do help you in that 100 days, and they do help you with other medical procedures as well. Let's talk through a couple of examples. I'm going to give an example, and for instance, let's say that a lady is named Mary, and Mary is 82 years old, and she has Alzheimer's, and she falls and breaks her hip. She goes to the hospital for 1 week. Then she's transferred to rehab from the hospital. And there, they think she may need to stay in skilled care because of the result of her broken hip, at least for an extended period of time. So she may want to try to apply for Medicaid. And if she does, then we have to take a look at what will make her eligible. Is she a citizen? Yes. She over 65? Yes, she's 82. Is she otherwise qualified in terms of financial assets? And that's what we have to talk about to do a crisis Medicaid plan. So Mary's income and assets, she has $1,600 a month. And what's going to happen to that? When she gets qualified for Medicaid, that's going to be paid to the state each month, though the state will give her $60 back each month, hopefully going up to 51 September the 1st, but that, or 75 on September the 1st. But that amount will be for incidentals that she may need to have done or to buy while she's in the nursing home. Her home is worth $225,000. She knows that she's not going to be living in her home, and she also knows, because she's talked to a Medicaid attorney, that she can't rent it out. She does know that if she had a relative or a friend or somebody from her church or the community that maybe it was down on their luck or had a low income, but could afford to live in the house and pay the utilities and the property taxes and pay for upkeep on the place, that she could enter into an agreement with somebody to pay those expenses. However, she couldn't enter into an agreement for rent. But if she did enter into such an agreement, That wouldn't violate the Medicaid rules. We know she has a checking account with $8,000. We know she can only keep a maximum of $2,000. So 8,000, 6,000 of that has got to be handled some way. She has 140,000 in savings. So that plus the 6,000 from the checking account gets her up to 146,000. Then she has a CD. That's going to get her up to 260,000, I believe. And she has life insurance with a cash value of 50,000 with an $80,000 benefit. She's got to do something with that cash value. She's only entitled to a maximum of $1,500 in insurance cash value. So what she would probably do or could do is cash in that policy and add the 50,000 to the other liquid assets that she has, or a family member could take over the payments on that policy, could pay her 50,000 and take over payments on that policy and change themselves to be the owner and the beneficiary of that policy, so that Mary has sold her life insurance policy and for the cash value, or she could just collect the cash value from the insurance company. However, her family dynamics would work best. In any event, she's got a little over $300,000. Something's got to be done with that to make her eligible for Medicaid, because she can only have 2,000 or less. So what we would do, she's also got an automobile. An automobile is exempt from getting qualified for Medicaid, so is the residence. But to protect it later on, she might want to use some of her cash to do a ladybird deed or a transfer on death deed, so that her residence will be protected for her family if she passes away while on Medicaid, since she is single. She might also go to the Department of Motor Vehicle forms on her automobile and find a form that says you can name a beneficiary for your automobile when you pass away, and do the same thing there. So from the assets that you see listed, we can protect her home and we can protect her automobile. So we've saved her home, we've saved her car. This is a crisis. We've purchased a prepaid burial program. You can spend up to $15,000 for burial and burial plot and so forth. We've saved 65% of her remaining countable assets, and she can immediately apply for Medicaid immediately, since we get the paperwork done and file with the state. Now, preserve the 65%. Basically, what we did was we bought a prepaid medical, or not a medical, but a prepaid annuity. And the prepaid annuity, we would preserve enough money to pay the penalty for the amount of gift that she's gifting to her family. And so she, in this particular calculation with the formulas that you use, she would have given 65% of her assets, of her non-countable, of her countable assets to her family, and paid 35% to purchase an annuity that, in addition to her income per month, would pay the full nursing home amount for the penalty period. And after the end of that, she would be on full Medicaid and would continue to pay her income to the state, but the state Medicaid agency would step in and pay the difference after the penalty is paid. So that's a way in a crisis that you can relatively quickly get someone qualified for Medicaid, nursing home Medicaid. All right, another example is John. John is 76 years old with dementia. He suffered a stroke. He's been hospitalized for 12 days, so he's met the 3-day test. He's been transferred to a rehab facility from the hospital. The doctors recommend he remain in skilled care. Presumably, he's been tested by the nursing home and also passed the test in Austin from the panel of doctors. And so he's going to remain in skilled care. So now we need to look at his assets and see what we have to do. He has income of $2,800 a month. That will be paid to the nursing home each month. He has a residence worth $370,000. The residence is worth less than the $688,000 that he's allowed to have, so he can keep that. He has a checking account with $42,000, a savings account with $120,000. He has a $60,000 CD. He has an $8,000 prepaid funeral, $8,000 cash value, and an automobile worth $6,000. As we look at that list, we know, excuse me, that the residence and the prepaid funeral and the automobile are all three protected as exempt assets while he's alive. And we know that we can do a ladybird deed to protect his home because it's worth less than the $688,000 maximum allowed for a residence. We know that a prepaid funeral that they allow you to spend up to $15,000 for that, so $8,000 is well within that limit. Could spend more if he wanted a little more elaborate funeral. The automobile, he can do a beneficiary designation. He can keep the car while he's alive and have it go to a beneficiary when he passes away. The cash amount is, let's see, $222,000. We know that he can keep $2,000, so $200,000 or $220,000 we've got to do something with to make him eligible. With that, we could buy an income source called a Medicaid compliant annuity that would pay him that $220,000 back over a period of time. Or it could be paid to a family member, to his wife if he had a wife. But that money could be paid, or he could do a gifting plan as well, like the previous one we did. But that money could be paid to a family member, and in this case, or it could be gifted and then pay a penalty. In this case, we actually preserved 83% of the accountable assets with the annuity, and the family got the other 83%. He was immediately eligible for Medicaid benefits. Bob and Sally. Bob and Sally are married. The good news about Medicaid, if you're a married couple, that the couples are allowed to make gifts to each other penalty free. So Bob can give cash to Sally or turn over his interest, his community interest in the homestead. He can turn over his retirement plan, income, and asset. There's a lot of flexibility with a married couple, and normally we can keep all their assets, save maybe some premium expense or something for something that we might have to buy. In this example, Bob is 74, has Alzheimer's, and he's in poor health. He had a fall and was hospitalized for 4 days. So he's beyond the 3-day category for hospitalization before applying for Medicaid. He now in rehab and he needs to remain in long-term care. So now we need to look at their assets and see what we can do with them. Bob's income is $3,200 a month. Sally's income is $890 a month. So Bob's income nominally would be paid to the nursing home. However, Sally is allowed $3,750.50. So, and she only has $890. So without doing the math in my head, about $2,800 of Bob's income would be paid to Sally each month, reducing his amount to $300 or $400 a month that he's paying for nursing home care, and improving Sally's income to $3,715.50. So that would help her, not quite to the level that the two of them had, but close. So she presumably would be able to live on that in the community, since they were living on about 4,100. Now she's living on 3,700. So that's not as bad a hit as some people expect. The residence, again, it's exempt. The automobile, it's possible because Sally is staying in the community that she could use, that she could keep the second car under a minimal amount that she's allowed to keep in this example. We know savings and CDs and checking are going to be $644,000. CDs, savings, and checking. So what we're going to do with that, we're going to do a ladybird deed. We're going to change the income for Sally. We're going to say that Sally is entitled up to $148,620 of the total amount of $442. So you divide that by 2, and it's 200 plus on each side. So Sally can keep $148.62 in cash on her side, and or include the $10,000 value of the car as part of the asset value that she's keeping, and take $138,620 in cash. Bob on his side will have to spend down to $2,000, so he'll have to spend all his money. What he will do is the family will acquire a Medicaid annuity that will pay that money to Sally. Since she's almost got an income that she had before Bob went into the nursing home, we might stretch that income repayment out over a long period of time to supplement her income, or we might pay it quickly to her, depending on her health and his health, and factors such as the amount of money it takes each of them to live on. One thing that can be done is if Sally were to die while the Medicaid was being repaid to her over time, because the penalty that's being paid for purchasing the annuity pays, in addition to Bob's income, all of the Medicaid amount. There is no penalty if the annuity is still paying, because the whole purpose of it was to pay the difference between Bob's income over time, so that Mary, the annuity income coming to her was hers to keep. So if Mary died prematurely while that Medicaid income was still coming to her, the amount would either be paid in a lump sum or over time to the family members that she designated to receive it. So in this particular case, even though it's a crisis situation, we've preserved the home and both cars. We've preserved 100% of the countable assets, and we've done an immediate application for Medicaid benefits by filling out the paperwork and sending it in to the state. Long-term insurance is a topic that in years past, many people had it as part of a company benefit. Some people still do, but they have limits. That, for instance, they might limit the amount they would pay daily to $100 a day or $50 a day. Obviously, whatever premium you pay, the larger the premium, the more of a payout you would get. They usually also now, or they have a maximum overall payout. So they might say, we'll pay up to $50,000 or $50 a day with a maximum of $150,000 or whatever. And you pay your premium over time to have that policy in place. The benefit of such a policy is if you have it, it may pay a large part of the nursing home cost over and above the income of the institutionalized spouse, thereby preserving extra income for the community spouse. You also have more care options. You may be able to get more specialized care than routine care provided under Medicare. And it helps keep the other resources that you have out of play for a longer period of time. Planning tools that we use for Medicaid, we use qualified income trust. I mentioned that earlier. That's a document that we use if someone has an income of greater than $2,742 per month that's going into a nursing home. In Texas, we have the ability to pay the income into a document that we create called a qualified income trust, where the money's deposited into a bank account, and then the trustee of the trust, a family member usually, would write a check to the nursing home each month, and the client would retain $60 of that amount. So qualified income trust is what we use if the person going in the nursing home exceeds the current version of the applicant's income cap in the state of Texas. We use annuities to convert an asset, a liquid asset such as cash, to an income stream, which is allowed under Medicaid rules, in which you can keep, provided you set it up properly and do it according to the rules. So annuities are a very useful asset to pay the penalty to allow you to keep assets or more assets and not have to spend them down. The spend down is what you do to get the institutionalized spouse eligible for the nursing home. They're only allowed to have $2,000 in countable assets. So they've got to get their name off countable assets such as bank accounts, brokerage accounts, cash accounts, all those kinds of countable accounts. Another thing that you can do is you can buy an excluded asset. For instance, let's say you had $600,000 and you lived in an apartment, you could buy a house. and 600 is less than 688, which is the current limit. So that would be legal. You could do that. One of the things, or some of the pitfalls to avoid, things you need to look out for, improper estate planning. Many times people look on the internet and they copy down a will or a power of attorney or something that they think will work for everything that might possibly come up in life. And unfortunately, they discover later that it won't work for everything that comes up in life. What you need to know is Medicaid or estate planning is a state law matter. So getting estate planning documents in Texas may not work so smoothly in Louisiana or in Arkansas or in Washington State. It's a state law creation. It's not the same in every state. So when you pull something off the internet, you don't necessarily know where it came from. And even if you knew that it came, for instance, from Texas, you may not know whether it was prepared by a lawyer or not. And you would also know that it probably wasn't personalized like it should be for your family. And it also may not have Medicaid protections built in to the estate planning documents, which are not ordinarily done, but we increasingly do that. And we always ask people if they want to do that. The next category is a lack of estate planning. This is a problem that we incur sometimes. And if you don't have an estate plan that allows you to take action with the estates and with the person that needs to be institutionalized, if you don't have the authority to do that, the only way by law that can be fixed is by doing a guardianship. A guardianship is appointing someone to be in charge of all your loved ones' financial resources. And the person that's appointed might or might not be somebody you would appoint if you had a choice. So to improve your odds in that situation, you might want to have a Texas document that's called Declaration of Guardian, where you declare to any future judge who in your family or friends would be people that you would want to and trust to be your guardians. And then if you never got the right kind of estate planning documents, at least you have a fallback. It's very expensive. You may not be happy with the results, but it's where you go if you don't have the proper documents. Many times people do it themselves. They'll handwrite something on a piece of paper. And while that can be a legal will in Texas, it may or may not do what you want done with your assets for the benefit of your family and loved ones. That's not a recommended approach. Deeds. One of the problems that I incur sometimes when a spouse dies, family members don't sometimes know that they need to probate the will in order to transfer 100% of the asset value of the community property to the surviving spouse. So if you don't do that, it can make a real complicated situation later when you die, because you never got the stuff from the first deceased spouse to the second deceased spouse. And now it's got to go by the law that the state has created to your family, as opposed to the choices you might have made to have it go to your family. It's called the law of descent and distribution. And you may or may not find that that will do exactly with your assets what you would have wanted done. Another thing that sometimes people do is just play by the old rules, just do nothing and see what happens. That's not a good way to do it. You should do proper estate planning. It helps you and it'll help your family.
I'm just going to give you a heads up. We've got about 16 more slides and we've got about 15 more minutes. I just tried to give you a heads up. I didn't know if there's part of this. I know all of it's important. I didn't know if there's parts that you're more comfortable with brushing through quicker on, but I'm just giving you a heads up.
And also, we have about 15 questions already.
All right. Well, the treatment of IRAs has changed, but you can still, they're still exempt, and you can leave them to family members through some of the tools that we just talked about. Medicaid has started to implement a rule. Medicaid always implements rules, and sometimes they change. That's a continuing process. When they change it and tell us it's final, we'll comply with it. It will be subject to it also when it's formalized. And you'll need to seek guidance when they come out, when they finalize this rule, to avoid costly mistakes. Types of community-based assets. We talked about this briefly. These are assisted living and home care. You can get assisted living care in your home. You can get on a wait list for a more elaborate version of that. You can apply, you can get on the wait list, and when your number comes up, you can get accepted into a community-based Medicaid program. The planning techniques are more limited. You've got to be eligible, and there are different rules that impact the ability to preserve assets. If that's a program you're interested in, you need to talk to somebody, State Health and Human Services, or one of the local offices of the State Health and Human Services Commission about the Star Plus program. That's the name of the program. Applying from the nursing home for community-based benefits. Basically, if you go into a nursing home as opposed to getting on the waiting list, or you're in a nursing home and you want to go home for care, you got to meet the medical needs test, got to need skilled nursing care. You can skip the wait list. You can go, you have more flexible planning options, and benefits will follow you from the nursing home to the community. In other words, whatever you set up to protect your assets will still work. Veterans and benefits. Veterans, wartime veterans, or their surviving spouses may be eligible to receive a monthly tax-free cash benefit to help cover medical expenses. One of the benefits is called aid in attendance. You must be eligible, and eligible means you served at least 90 days of active duty with at least 1 day during a period of war. And the wartime periods are defined in the law. You must have anything other than a dishonorable discharge. A surviving spouse must have been married to the Vietnam veteran at the time of his passing and not remarried unless to another wartime veteran. Must require the assistance of another person to perform some of the daily activities of daily living. Must have income and countable resource criteria budget established by the VA, and surviving a single veteran could get up to $2,229 a month. A surviving spouse could get up to $1,432 a month. A married veteran could get up to $2,642 a month. And two married veterans could get $3,536 a month. Again, that's tax-free. And the amount that you get depends on your budget, your assets, and your expenses, and how much of the benefit amount it takes to cover your shortfall, or cover as much as the benefit will cover of your shortfall. If you have long-term care insurance, that can help pay for that. Also, you can private pay. While we can't stop the aging process, with proper planning, we can make it an easier transition for you and your loved ones. Prepare or proper care and a plan to pay for that care are vitally important for adults of all ages. It's always a good idea to plan ahead. The estate planning documents that we would hope that people have when they enter into a Medicaid planning situation would be a last will and testament, a statutory durable power of attorney, a medical power of attorney, HIPAA declaration, directive to physicians, declaration of guardian, agent for disposition of remains. Other planning done with trust, you could have a revocable living trust. You could have a retirement trust. You could have an irrevocable trust. You could have special needs planning. That's a special needs trust. You could have a Medicaid asset protection trust or a veterans asset protection trust. Or you could have a family protection trust. These are all legal documents that have various criteria to be eligible that can be helpful in planning your Medicaid emergency situation or long-term situation. Documents that may not have the proper provisions for long-term care, you can have incapacity without estate planning documents. What you have to go to there, the only alternative is guardianship. That's a time-consuming and expensive process, and you may not get the choice of who you want to be your guardian unless you've planned properly. And you may assume that that's never going to happen, but sometimes it does, and you don't want it to be happening to you. The do-it-yourself approach, where you're going to handle all this Medicaid yourself, is sometimes not a good idea. It's emotionally cost prohibitive. It stresses and strains the family at a time where they're already in stress and strain because of the loved one needing to go into the nursing home. The financial impact from not having estate planning documents often far exceeds what the documents would have cost. It's just not a good idea to do your own papers or get them off the internet. You really need to have someone who's qualified by the State Bar Association in their state preparing those documents for you. Why hire an elder law attorney? A legitimate question. Elder law attorneys generally focus on the need of seniors, and we have a variety of legal tools and techniques available to us that are not necessarily known to all other lawyers. I know when I went to law school, they didn't have anything called elder law. I had to learn that one myself on my own. Took me 2 years of studying and going to seminars before I took my first case. It's a good idea to take an overall approach into the key issues for seniors. You need to look at their age, their condition, whether they're long-term or short-term life expectancy. You need to do that for the same for the beneficiaries. When you design a financial system to support what they need in the long run, if they need to go into Medicaid or in their life after retirement. There are referral networks that you can refer that you can get attorneys' names from. National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys is a national group that I belong to, and many Texas attorneys also belong to that group. So they have a Texas chapter of National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys. You may be a professional in the elder law care arena and would like to understand how you can help your clients find the help they need. And you may have attended this event out of concern for your care or that of a loved one. We value education and provide free consultations and educational speaking events in our law firm. Our law firm is,
there you go. There, we got contact information for
right.
for Tom and Rhonda is a paralegal within their office as well, and Sheila's information will have. I'll have this follow up.
Ron,
I'm sorry.
So that's why she's not supposed to be on the slide. So that's why.
That's
my
right.
bad.
But I will have all. I will have their contact information on the email I send out as well. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go over the CU stuff real quick. While Tom and Sheila are looking at the questions, and then we'll get back to the questions here in just a second. First of all, for those of you today that are joining us for CEUs or for the first time we're offering CLEs, or Heyman Hogue is offering complimentary CLEs for attorneys in Texas, you will need to complete the following two forms: the Texas Medicaid evaluation, 2023 evaluation form, that, and the Texas Medicaid 2023 sign-in sheet will both be emailed to you in my follow-up email. So please look for those. You will need to complete both of those and email them to Sheila at the email address. It's on the slide, but that will also be in the follow-up email. We also ask if you would please complete the Google survey. That should pop up as you try to close out a Zoom today, but if it does not, you will also receive that link in the follow-up email as well. So Sheila, do you want to cover some of the questions
Yes.
to Tom? And that would be great.
Okay. The first one I have, I tried to do these, folks, on the order that I saw them. The first one I have was from Holly on there. Isn't the Star Plus waiver program the same thing as what used to be known as the community-based alternative program that had been managed by Texas Department of Aging and Disability Services?
I don't know the answer to that. I know that the Star Plus program is an experimental program implemented in the state of Texas a few years ago in order to, on a trial basis, to determine whether or not it was less expensive for the state to care for a person in the nursing home versus in their own home. And that in the early days of that program, COVID came along, and the whole system has been in rigorous situation ever since. So I don't know that they have the answer to that, but the Star Plus program is a program to determine whether it's less expensive one way or the other, and they're still trying to figure that out. I don't know whether it's the former program called a new name or not.
Okay, next question is from Monica. Did he say it is more timely to get on Star Plus if you're transferring out of a nursing home? And I think you've answered that. Yes, because you can skip the waiting line.
Right.
Also, is there still a 2-year waiting list for assisted living Medicaid in North Texas if you don't do that?
Are you talking about SSI or what?
No, if you the Medicaid, if you don't, in other words, if you just get on the waiting list.
Oh, okay. The waiting list improved. I had a client in the early days of it that it went like 8 or 9 months before they got accepted into the nursing home. And when you're dealing with a crisis situation, you really can't, you just can't wait that long. So if you have a crisis situation, quickest thing to do is apply for and get nursing home care immediately. And then as soon as you're approved for Medicaid by the state, apply to go home and have care in your home. So that's the way you do it if you need to do it in a hurry.
Okay, the next question was from Diana. Finding it. Okay. Are these the same? Are these numbers the same if the individual is on Medicaid due to disability from birth?
Well, to get nursing home Medicaid, these are the numbers, yes.
Okay.
But if you can get specialized programs. So for instance, let's say you're an iron lung from polio. There's a program that's been in effect for that since the 50s. So it depends on what your disability is.
How can someone who has QMB only apply for the Star Plus program?
I have no idea. We don't actually do the SSI stuff. We do nursing home Medicaid.
Yes.
So it just so you know, there'll be 2 phone numbers in the follow-up email. One will be a Texas statewide number for your area agency on aging. And if you call that statewide number, they'll get you in touch with your area agency on aging. But there also is a statewide number for the Aging and Disability Resource Center. That will also, once they get some location information, they will actually transfer your call to the local ADRC. So what those 2 numbers, there's people there that answer those phones that can help you get to where you apply for some of these different programs. So please look for that in the follow-up email.
Awesome. That's awesome. Okay.
Also, Health and Human Services has offices all over the Metroplex that you can go to. I don't know if they have one in Greece. I rather doubt it.
Okay, Danielle wants to know, what is the difference between a homestead trust and a trust deed? I don't understand that question exactly, but.
I don't understand it either, but a homestead trust that you put your homestead in might be what a homestead trust is. So you create a revocable living trust and you deed your home to it.
A trust deed is very, very, very different. A trust deed is a mortgage mechanism that that is how they access. It's a deed in trust to someone as long as your mortgage is not paid off. So that's a very, very, very different document than a than a trust. They do very different things. So please be careful who you have help you with that.
Okay, Diane wants to know, are these numbers the same if the individual is on Medicaid due to disability from birth? I think we've already covered that.
We already covered that.
Okay.
The answer is I don't know, but
Okay.
I think so.
Okay. All right. Bernice said, this is a good one. Bernice says, what happens when the spouse outside of the nursing home, so in other words, the community spouse, has no income and is dependent on the spouse's income that's in the facility? What, if any, of the institutional spouse's income would the community spouse receive?
All the income up to $3,715 per month.
Okay.
So the spouse outside of the nursing home can take everything until they get to the maximum. And then
Right.
whatever's over that, that starts getting attributed to the spouse in the nursing home. As long as
Right.
they do it correctly, because what they're doing is gifting, they can gift that much to the outside spouse, correct?
Well, it's not actually a gift. When you do the Medicaid application, you do the calculation that
Okay.
shows them what you're doing.
I see.
Okay, this is another good one. This is from Carol. I have a current single male client with Alzheimer's, but he is still somewhat independent with activities of daily living. But he does require constant supervision to help manage medication, meals, wandering, etc. He had community Medicaid at home, but his son could not provide enough care and moved him to assisted living. Medicaid stopped the Medicaid when he moved to assisted living. How does he get into Star Plus or a similar program for help? Son cannot afford the assisted living long term. The client's only income is $1,400 a month.
Well, Star Plus is a community-based program. So given the situation that you just described for the individual, taking him back to the community, to the home, doesn't sound like a logical thing to do. He can apply for Medicaid. And if he meets all the criteria, he can get into a nursing home.
Well, but I think she's saying he really doesn't. Here's the problem. And we've had this coming in our office all the time. They say he doesn't really qualify for nursing care. Well,
the way to find out is to take him to the nursing home and have him do the test to see if he meets the need for skilled nursing care. If he does meet that need, then they'll send the test results to Austin to the panel of doctors. And if he meets it there, he's met it twice, and he is eligible, except for financial and citizenship and other issues. But I would be very hesitant if I were caring for that man to assume that, what kind of care he needs. I believe a doctor really ought to be the one saying that.
So they have to meet medical eligibility, and then if they meet medical eligibility, they've got to meet financial eligibility for the Medicaid.
Right. And whether he can live at home or not, I think a doctor ought to be saying that.
okay. Debbie asked, go ahead.
I'm just saying, as an attorney, I don't advise people whether you need to be in or not.
Yeah, I know.
Right.
I get
The authorities.
They're there. Yeah, they're here to help you with the financial aspects of it, the financial eligibility aspects of it, and the asset protection part of it, not the medical necessity.
Yes, right.
That's right.
Okay. Debbie asked, which is preferable? And this is a good question. I hope everyone listens to this. A transfer on death deed or a ladybird deed?
They're both useful for different reasons. I will tell you, and well, I probably shouldn't tell that story. It happened back in 2004 when they were first considering all this. But I'm not going to tell that story. Sorry. For a ladybird deed, that is a kind of a Texas character. And when state Medicaid implemented Medicaid to state recovery, that's a procedure that didn't exist in Texas until the early 2000s. When Medicaid to state recovery came in, the question was, well, all these people have houses in revocable living trust and they don't go through probate. And so we can't make a claim against the asset to get repaid for what the state has paid for their care. So they changed the law and said that all trusts houses, homesteads must be removed from the trust. When you take it out of the trust, then it's part of your probate estate. Well, we argued with them a little bit. A panel of us went down to Austin to meet with them. And then we went away, and as we talked among ourselves, we determined that maybe they didn't know there was such thing as a ladybird deed or a life estate deed. And so we agreed with what they said, and then we started using life estate deeds, which are deeds that allow you to do as I described it earlier without going all through that again. And a transfer on death deed is something the state came up with a year or two into the process, and then they didn't like the way it worked, so they got rid of it, and now they've come up with another version. Myself, I generally use the ladybird deed just because I've been using it for a lot of years, and it always works, and it's never a problem. But there can be title companies which might prefer a transfer on death deed. So sometimes when you're dealing with a homestead, after the family has cashed out of the life estate deed and they're trying to get possession of the property, you may have to have family members sign a quitclaim deed or something in order to turn over nominal interest that the law would allow if they didn't have the ladybird deed, just to make it work. Same thing can happen on a transfer for death deed, but less often.
Okay.
If
How
the
does,
deed,
okay, go ahead.
if the deed is going to be acted upon immediately, generally people prefer to do the transfer on death deed. If it's a long range process, I prefer at least the ladybird deed.
Can I ask a quick question? You talked a lot about assets and home values and maximum home values in regards to protection. And
Right.
we've seen home values go up so fast in Texas so quickly. How often do people need to reconsider that and be going in and looking at what the new value is and what now do I need to do so I don't get in trouble and lose part of that?
Well, the answer is the value now is $688,000. Probably the majority of people that are applying for Medicaid don't have a house worth that much or has equity in it of that much. But you can get a home equity loan, you can get a mortgage, you can borrow to reduce that 688 fair market value down to 500 or 550 or whatever, and keep your home, and it's okay, it's legal.
But can you use the tax roll value to document fair market value, or do you have to pay for an appraisal?
In the state of Texas, the tax appraisal value is accepted as the legal fair market value in the state, unless you get some kind of an appraisal or something done that says it's different, more or less.
Yeah, I see. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. How does a non-working senior with a continuing wheelchair need qualify as disabled? How does that fit into Medicaid?
Well, I would assume if you went to the nursing home and got tested by the nurse to see if you're eligible for Medicaid nursing home, that would be how you would find out if that person was eligible. If he's trying to acquire or trying to qualify for one of the other programs, he would like community home-based care, Star Plus. You would have to talk to the people that do those things and find out what they say. I'm sorry, all I really know how to do is the nursing home Medicaid, and I've been doing that for a long time.
Does living in a senior apartment, not assisted living, qualify the same as living at home?
Again, you'd have to ask the Star Plus program if that would work.
Okay.
I know that people do live in assisted living that are Medicaid qualified that do get benefits, but I don't know the mechanism to make that happen.
Yeah, and if you're living in a senior apartment and a regular senior apartment, just because it's allocated as a senior apartment, that would be considered home. You would be considered living in your home.
Yes. If
Well,
you don't, oh, go ahead.
You can do it whether you're at home or you can do it in an assisted living. It is possible to get Medicaid in an assisted living. But it probably is someone who's ambulatory and remembers to take their medicine and can get out of bed by themselves and those sort of things.
Okay. If you don't own a home, would it be too late to qualify for Medicaid by investing in your child's home?
It is possible to do that. You need to have the advice of a lawyer when you do it, though, because that's not something you want to dream up at home.
Yeah.
You want to make sure it's done properly so everybody's protected. But it is possible to make an investment in your child's home.
Okay. Crystal has two questions.
Okay.
How easy of a process is it to get protection, asset protection, such for assets such as funeral, car, home, etc.? I work in hospice, and many need care ASAP.
Would you kind of go through them one by
Okay,
one?
yeah, there's she's another part to this.
Oh,
How
okay.
does it work if they have insurance and get Medicaid? Insurance is now paying for hospice at this time. Will it affect their insurance? Medicaid, if they were to get qualified for Medicaid? And is it necessary for them to get Medicaid? They are not in a facility and have no plans for facility placement at this time.
I would say they need to talk to the hospice people that run that program. I don't know.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of pieces to unfold there. First of all, the first list of things seem to be the things that are automatically exempt. You know, the funeral
Prepaid funeral up to $15,000, the homestead up to $688,000, a car, no practical limit. Those are exempt.
They're automatically exempt. You don't have to do anything to do that, right?
That's correct. Well, if your home is worth more than the $688,000, you got to do something. Or if your burial plan is worth more than $15,000, you've got to do something about that. But as long as it's within the limits and within the definition of the program, it's fine.
So they would not be, and I'm just kind of reiterating on what I'm hearing you say. They wouldn't need to do anything as long as they're within those limits. It's automatic. You don't have to go and apply for it or do anything to cover that.
That's correct for Medicaid, but I think they're talking about hospice, which is maybe some other program that's not a Medicaid program or not a nursing home Medicaid program.
Yeah.
And I don't know what their rules are.
I see. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Trying to the best ones. A lot of them are about Star Plus, and he, like he says, we do not do that. That's the Health and Human Services.
I put a link to their website in the chat earlier. I will also include that link, plus again the numbers for the Area Agency on Aging or the Aging and Disability Resource Centers across Texas. If you're in Texas, if you're outside of Texas, the U.S. is covered by Area Agencies on Aging. It's part of the 1960s Older Americans Act. So you'll find an Area Agency on Aging in your area that should be able to help you with that. But please know they're not all called Area Agencies on Aging. They may be called Aging Services or something similar, but there is one across the country for every county in the country.
And Janet wants to know, are there affordable options for families to get assistance with these tools and documents?
Well, yes. I mean, find a lawyer who's reasonable.
Okay.
That's the joke.
Yeah,
For income qualified people that are low income, I will include the links also to the our service area, Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. And if you go to their website, it will tell you what things they help with and don't. In other words, what you can go to them for. But they are income qualified, so you would have to meet their low income guidelines in order to get their assistance.
There's an organization called the National Academy of Elder Law Attorneys that I belong to. We're all over Texas, and Medicaid is what we do. So if you want to find one of those attorneys who can tell you what he knows about it and what he charges to do what you need to do, you can Google NALA Texas and get into their list of attorneys and find someone close to you and see what you can learn.
I will try to get that link in the follow-up email as well.
And I don't mean to make a joke about finding an attorney who's reasonable. Most of us who are in this business have a heart, and we try to help people. That's what makes it work for us. It's not money or power or glory. It's helping people. And I think you'll find that many of us will go the extra mile to help someone truly in need.
Very good. Is that it, Sheila? Did we cover everything?
I think so, Marty.
Very good.
I'm jumping back and forth between them, but I really do think so.
I get it. Y'all, please look for the follow-up email. That will have everything in it. Tom, thank you so very much. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We sure appreciate it. Sheila, thank you so very much. We sincerely appreciate it. You guys, next month, we're going to be talking about addiction in the family. We not only have someone from Heyman Hogue, but Sheila can tell you we have an LPC that will be with us as well, who works for a law firm that specializes in addiction. Is that correct?
Well, they are very active in the recovery community, and they are a criminal firm as well as a family law firm. So they have many experiences with this. Yes. So a lot of their clients are addicts or families of addicts. Yes.
And so we're going to be talking about planning if you have an addict in the family, but also resources for responding, I guess, to issues that become affected by, or families become affected by, because of addiction in the family. So please join us for that and help us get the word out for that. You'll see information on that in the follow-up email as well. Thank you all so much. That's a subject
near and dear to my heart, obviously, because my family has been in that area for many years, and thank God it's on the other side and in the recovery area. So, we want to give all of these resources out. I wish all of it people could join us for that one, because we want to give so many resources out for people, and obviously get the shame out of the situation and get the help that people need.
And a free space to come and ask questions. And just so you know, I want to always point out that in the chat, you can put anonymous if you do not want your name to show up in the chat, right. Or you can put your chat just to the presenters and not have it to everyone. So please understand, it will be a safe space for you to come and ask your questions and get them answered as well. So thank you so much.
May I say thank you for spending this time with me as well.
Great. Thank you all. Thank you very much for joining us. You all have a wonderful day.